Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 17th chapter. For great are thy judgments and cannot be expressed. Therefore unnurtured souls have erred. And unnurtured souls are those that don't know the Lord, right? They haven't been educated on the Lord and in his ways. And so they err, not knowing the ways of the Lord and going astray from him. For when unrighteous men thought to oppress the holy nation, the unrighteous men are the Egyptians, and the holy nation are the Israelites. Going back to the time of Exodus, they being shut up in their houses, the prisoners of darkness, and fettered with the bonds of a long night. This is dealing with the Egyptians, right? When the Lord brought that darkness, that thick darkness that could be felt. Fettered is like to be shackled up with the bonds or the chains of a long night. It's metaphorical speech. Lay there exiled from the eternal providence. And the word providence here, once again, is like the grace of the Lord, the power of the Lord. Providence. The protective care of God or of nature as of spiritual power. So they were exiled from that. They were stuck in this darkness and they couldn't escape it. For while they supposed to lie hid in their secret sins, so they thought they could just lie, like basically like everything was going to be good, even though they had committed all these sins against us. They were scattered under a dark veil of forgetfulness, right? Thinking that their sins were, their commandments to kill our babies, enslaving us under them, was all just going to be, forgotten. At that time, as it says, being horribly astonished and troubled with strange apparitions. So during that darkness, it wasn't just like, okay, it's dark. Okay, let's just sleep it off. No, they were being troubled by strange apparitions. So the Lord, it's like the Lord locking you in a room, shutting off the lights, and then sending demons at you. That's what an apparition is, right? Ghosts, demons, scary sights. For neither might the corner that held them keep them from fear, but noises of water. So wherever they were in their habitations, it wasn't safe for them. They were all made afraid. But the noises as of waters falling down sounded about them. So imagine, you're just there. It's very dark. You can't see anything. And you just hear what it sounds like a waterfall right directly next to you. And sad visions, which is talking about those scary demons, appeared onto them with heavy countenances. So they were very scary looking, and they popping up. I mean, you're talking about some of the scariest sights, probably a demon with 7 eyes, the 2 sharp fangs, a long tongue, them movies you be watching, Paranormal Activity and the Conjuring and all of that. The nuns, they like to use the nuns, the zombie nuns, right? They got the face of like a rotten zombie and they look like a nun. It says here, no power of the fire might give them light. So it was so dark that no flame could it could be right in front of you and you wouldn't be able to see it. That's how dark it was. Neither could the bright flames of the stars endure to lighten that horrible night. So in the nighttime, the stars are shining, the moon shines, and so you can get some light off of that. But this was like a veil of darkness that was just hovering, surrounding, engulfing them. So not even the stars could shine through it. Only there appeared unto them a fire kindled of itself. So here it is. No, you couldn't see anything, and all of a sudden, boom, you just see a fire just lit of itself. You see why the Lord was called the King of Terrors. Very dreadful. For being much terrified, they thought the things which they saw to be worse than the sight they saw not. So they were so afraid. They were so afraid, they thought, as it says, the things that they saw were worse than the sight that they saw not. Whatever it is they could imagine, it wasn't as bad as the things they were actually seeing. And that's it's like living in a scary movie. Verse 7, for the illusions of art magic, they were put down, and their vaunting in wisdom was reproved with disgrace. Because remember, they were also equipped with left hand magic, right? Like they did those things, they replicated some of the miracles that Moses and Aaron did, and so they thought they would be good. The Lord here, or as Solomon is saying, they were likened onto illusions of art magic, like magic tricks. And they were very quickly put down in comparison to the actual power and fear that the Lord put within them. And their vaunting or their boasting in wisdom was reproved with disgrace. When they saw that they were completely out of their league, yeah, all that boasting went out the window very quickly. For they that promised to drive away terrors and troubles from a sick soul were sick themselves for fear, worthy to be laughed at. So, they would use their left-handed practices to drive away ills and terrors from a sick soul, right? To heal people, right, of their people. And now they themselves were sick for fear. What happened to all that, that magic and the rituals and stuff they were doing? They realized, yo, we're dealing with a higher power over here. Okay, as it says, worthy to be laughed at. So you can imagine the faces they had on. I mean, completely scared. So, like they say, scared shitless. Soiling their pants, crying so much you got streams down your eyeballs, down your out of your nose, sweating. They're hot and they're cold at the same time. They don't know whether to go from being dark skinned to light skin out of paleness. Verse 9, it says, for though no terrible thing did fear them, yet being scared with beasts that pass by and hissing of serpents. See, so at the time, nothing really happened to them. Like, even though nothing had physically happened to them yet, just hearing, imagine that you're hearing beasts passing by or serpents slithering around, and you can hear it. Like it's right next to you. You turn around, like when a mosquito is like flying by you and it just fly by your ears and you just like, it's so irritating. But this is like hearing a serpent, or like a wild animal, and you can tell by their sounds. Like it sounds like a wild lion or a tiger, their little growl, and it just sounds very close. That little that they be doing, and it sounds like it's walking up to you, but you can't see anything. Verse 10, they died for fear. So some of them went into shock, and there's cooked for out of being so scared, denying that they saw the air, which could of no side be avoided. Okay, and I'm going to read this in the GNTD as well. It says, and so they died, shaking with fear, afraid to open their eyes, afraid even to open their eyes, yet unable to keep them shut. Damn. It says here, verse 11, for wickedness condemned by her own witness is very timorous, and being pressed with conscience always forecasteth grievous things. Okay, what that means is wickedness makes people fearful, right? As it says, wickedness condemned by her own witness, right? Those that are wicked themselves. So wickedness makes people fearful because their own conscience condemns them, right? That's what it is. It's very timorous and being pressed with conscience. Their conscience condemns them. Why? Because it makes them expect something terrible to happen. Because it's like a part of their mind that is like, you're deserving of this. That's why it says it always forecasteth grievous things. So they're always in their conscience expecting something grievous, something bad to happen. And now, you already know what's going through their minds. They knew they shouldn't have been oppressing these people. After that fourth or fifth plague, they knew, nah, we got to let them go. Probably had some of them pissed off at Pharaoh. It's Pharaoh's fault. Now look at what we're going through. Well, got to deal with it, buddy. Verse 12, for fear is nothing else but a betraying of the succors which reason offereth. Now let's look at this word here, which is like comfort. Succors. Oh, succors. It says assistance and support in times of hardship and distress. So fear is the betraying of that assistance that reasoning offers, right? If you hear, right, let's say like you watch some of these scary movies, somebody ends up in a, some scary area, some abandoned house, or it's very dark, and they're like in a forest somewhere, and then, or they're in some scary abandoned house somewhere, and then they hear like a twig snap, or they hear something run, and they're just like, yo, what was that? Did you hear that? What? They're stressed, right? But let's say they go a little closer, and then a cat runs out, and they're like, oh, whew, okay, it was just a cat. That moment right there is the assistance, the succor that reason is offering, because now their brain is like, oh, okay, I know what that was, right? They reasoned about that sound, and they know that it wasn't anything, unusual or unnatural. It was a cat. So they're calm. What happens with fear is it betrays that. So you're not able to reason about what's going on because you're so afraid. So your brain is not thinking, when you say, oh, what was that? You're not thinking maybe it's a cat. You're thinking the worst possible thing. Is that a ghost? you know? So that's why it says fear is nothing else but the betraying of the comfort or the assistance or the help that reason offers. That's why when you don't know something or you can't reason about it, you're afraid. You become afraid. If you're on the phone with a loved one and all of a sudden you hear a scream and then the phone cuts off, you don't know what's going on, so you become scared. You become worried. What's going on? Verse 13, it says, and the expectation from within being less counteth the ignorance more than the cause which bringeth the torment. Okay? So the expectation from within being less, meaning their confidence being less, being so low, they count the ignorance, the things that they don't know, or the things that they're afraid of that is happening because they don't have reason or of it, to be more than the cause of what's actually happening. So they're being tormented by something, but what they're actually imagining is far worse, okay, than whatever it is they're actually going through. I'm going to read verse 13 in the GNTD. It says, when you lack the confidence to rely on reason, you give in to the fears caused by ignorance. Verse 14, but they sleeping the same sleep that night, which was indeed intolerable, and which came upon them out of the bottoms of inevitable hell. Oh, my Lord. So nobody was getting sleep that night. And you just hearing, imagine being in Goshen, you just hearing the screams of the Egyptians wailing. It says here, so as it says that it was intolerable, right? They experienced a scene straight out of hell. Were partly vexed with monstrous apparitions. You're seeing like beasts, demons. Imagine a three-headed beast. All of a sudden, a flame just lights up, and then right in front of you, like literally right in front of you, like 2 centimeters away, the when the light comes on, you just see this beast. Like they like to show you in those scary movies. The light comes on suddenly, and you see like this half man, half beast. The head, like it's like it has 2 heads, 3 horns on his head. Red eyes, and you just see it looking at you from like the corner of your door, and then the light goes out, and then the light comes on again, and it's like right in front of you, boom. With his tongue out and shit, long ass fingernails. So that's like these monstrous apparitions. Like they were going through hell. Okay, and like imagine how scared you have to be to actually die. You got to be completely scared out your mind. It says here, and partly fainted, their heart failing them. Yeah, some people catching heart attacks, some people dropping, just too much. For a sudden fear and not looked for came upon them. So this is they didn't expect this. And they dealt with left hand practices, which some people would look at as scary in itself. But this, they were completely out of their league. So then whosoever there fell down was straitly kept, shut up in a prison without iron bars. I'm going to read verse 16 in the GNTD. It says, people would suddenly collapse and lie locked in the chains of their own fear. right? That's the shut up without iron bars. So they're not actually in prison, but paralyzed with fear. Verse 17, for whether he were husbandman or shepherd or a laborer in the field, he was overtaken and endured that necessity which could not be avoided. For they were all bound with one chain of darkness. So it didn't matter what your role or profession was, they all suffered it. Whether it were a whistling wind or a melodious noise of birds among the spreading branches, or a pleasing fall of water running violently. So they're hearing these sounds very, very vividly. You know, mind you, you just hear like an owl. It's very dark and you just hear an owl, or you hear some chirping. You hear a mockingbird. Or you just hear like water just, just like, man. It says, or a terrible sound of stones cast down. Imagine it sounding like, buildings collapsing, like demolition jobs happening left and right around you. You looking to the left, you looking to the right, oh shit, yo, what's going on? But you can't see anything. And you just hear people screaming. Or a running that could not be seen of skipping beasts. So you hear animals, maybe it's like a horse, maybe it's a hippopotamus or rhino. And you just hear the click, clack, click, clack, 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 clack. Or a roaring voice of most savage wild beasts. Look, man, at that point, you just hear a lion roaring, or two or three of them. And things, a jaguar? They have those very ferocious, I don't know what to call that. It's not like a roar, but it's like that sound that they make, like a growl. And you just hear that. You might feel a little drip on your shoulder. You're like, yo. Them eyes pop wide open. And it just gets, it feels like it's very close to you. Because sounds can be very, very deceiving. So imagine that. It sounds like it's literally right next to your ear. Like it's almost there to touch you. Or a rebounding echo from the hollow mountains. These things made them swoon for fear, right? Sounding like an echo. Imagine you scream and it just sounds like you're in some far, far away mountain and you just hear the echo, 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 echo. Or you hear the lion or the animal growl and then it just echoes, 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 echoes. You're like, yo. For the whole world shined with clear light and none were hindered in their labor. So everybody else, they were good. But Egypt in that area was just filled with darkness going through this. You got somebody in their third dream, fast asleep, drooling their ass off. And meanwhile, the same night, you got somebody, crying their eyeballs out because they're being tormented like this. Over them only was spread an heavy night, an image of that darkness which should afterwards receive them. Right, that darkness that should afterwards receive them is basically like death. It says, but yet were they unto themselves more grievous than the darkness. Okay, so that thick darkness that covered them was like a picture, an image, a little glimpse of the deeper darkness or that death that was awaiting them. And their own fear and their guilt was worse than the darkness itself that they were going through. So it was a very horrific time for them. But that brings us to the end of the Book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 17th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak Wadash. And until next time, Shalom.